Hey there, true crime enthusiasts and deep thinkers. Today I bring you another wildly weird and possibly unknown things video, this time around the Caylee Anthony case and the Caylee Anthony trial. But before I reveal the 3 wildly weird and possibly unknown things, let's review a brief synopsis of this tragic and high-profile legal saga that unfolded in Orlando, Florida in 2008 and 2009. She's been called Tot Mom and the most hated woman in America. The central figure was Caylee Anthony, a young mother whose 2-year-old daughter, Caylee Anthony, went missing in June of 2008. Caylee Anthony was reported missing by her grandmother, Cindy Anthony, in July 2008, a month after she was last seen. Caylee Anthony, Caylee's mother, initially told investigators a series of conflicting stories, including that Caylee had been kidnapped by a nanny. As the investigation progressed, discrepancies in Caylee's statements and the lack of cooperation with law enforcement raised suspicions. The world wept when in December 2008, the remains of Caylee Anthony were discovered in a wooded area near the Anthony's family home. The discovery intensified the investigation into the circumstances surrounding Caylee's death. The prosecution argued that Caylee Anthony intentionally murdered her daughter. The defense countered by suggesting that Caylee's death was accidental and that Caylee's behavior was a result of a troubled upbringing. The trial, which took place in 2011, gained national attention for its intense media coverage and public scrutiny. In a surprising verdict, Caylee Anthony was acquitted of first-degree murder, but found guilty of providing false information to law enforcement. She was released from jail in 2011. The Caylee Anthony case stirred debates about the justice system, media influence, and the challenges of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The case remains a somber chapter in legal history, sparking discussions about the complexities of high-profile trials and their impact on public perception. The case and trial revealed several interesting and lesser-known aspects that captivated the public's attention. Here are 3 intriguing or wildly weird facets of the Caylee Anthony case and the Caylee Anthony trial. Number 1. Odor analysis. Odor analysis is a technique developed by PhD Dr. Vass, who was called as an expert witness for the prosecution of Caylee Anthony. The good doctor and his expertise were on display for all the world in 2008 during the trial. His contribution to the attempted conviction of Caylee Anthony had to do with the trunk of her car. You remember, the car she abandoned in a check-cashing parking lot, smelling of death and soured pizza. Which, I'm sorry, I have to interject here, they're not the same thing. The detection of a strong odor in Caylee Anthony's car trunk was a crucial piece of evidence which became a focal point in the prosecution's case. The prosecution argued that the odor resulted from the decomposition of Caylee's body, alleging that Caylee had stored her daughter's remains in the trunk. Forensic experts, including those specializing in odor analysis, were called to testify during the trial. The analysis focused on the volatile compounds associated with human decomposition. The presence of certain chemicals, such as putrescine and cadaverine, contributed to the conclusion that a decomposing body had been in the trunk. Dr. Vass actually identified 41 compounds associated with decomposition in Caylee Anthony's trunk. FBI laboratory results significantly backed up Dr. Vass's findings with their findings of compounds in the air of the trunk that are associated with decomposition. 67% of compounds found and isolated from Caylee's trunk are associated with human decomposition. However, the defense countered the prosecution's claims by challenging the reliability of the odor analysis due to it being a technique still under development and not universally accepted within the scientific community. Additionally, the defense cited potential contamination and the subjective nature of interpreting smells, arguing that odor might have been from other sources such as spoiled food or a bag of trash. Ultimately, the jury's verdict, which acquitted Caylee Anthony of first-degree murder but found her guilty on charges of providing false information to law enforcement, further fueled debates about the role of forensic science and the complexities of criminal investigations. And that's why odor analysis and the fascinating findings from this technique take a place in this wildly weird and possibly unknown things about the Caylee Anthony case, Caylee Anthony trial. Number 2. Suspicious Google searches. The word chloroform was mentioned quite a bit during trial, as it was one of those chemical compounds isolated from the trunk of Caylee Anthony's car. It was early on suspected, and remains a popular theory, that little Caylee was drugged with chloroform, so there's no wonder why legal counsel focused a lot of efforts and arguments on connecting and dissecting the chloroform dots, so to speak. There were indeed searches performed on the Anthony family computer that became a focal point of the prosecution's case. Some of the notable searches included terms like chloroform, neck breaking, and how to make chloroform. These searches were conducted around the time when prosecutors alleged that Caylee Anthony had intentionally killed her daughter Caylee. The prosecution argued that these searches were indicative of premeditation and demonstrated malicious intent on Caylee Anthony's part. However, defense countered that these searches were not conclusive evidence of guilt and could be explained by factors such as multiple individuals having access to the family's computer or the presence of innocent explanations for the searches. It's important to note that the specific content and context of these searches were a subject of debate during the trial. The defense questioned the reliability and interpretation of the searches, emphasizing alternative explanations for the presence of certain keywords. The searches, along with other forensic evidence, were part of the broader narrative presented by both the prosecution and the defense in this high-profile case. Cindy Anthony, Caylee's mother and grandmother to victim little Caylee, actually took the stand at Caylee's trial and, under oath, claimed that she was responsible for the internet searches on chloroform, but that they were by pure accident, a mere case of typos or autocorrect. Cindy told the judge and jury that she had mistakenly stumbled into chloroform findings while attempting a search for chlorophyll. According to her testimony, she was concerned about the presence of bamboo in the family's backyard and wanted to understand whether it could be harmful to their dogs. Now, just falling back on, logic, I'd like to play a little devil's advocate here when it comes to Cindy Anthony's explanation. If you were in fact concerned that a particular plant could be poisonous to dogs, why wouldn't you just search that? Hey Google, are bamboo plants harmful to dogs? Personally, it's quite unbelievable to me that an intelligent nurse, nonetheless, with the intention of answering the question, is bamboo bad for the dog, decides instead to research chlorophyll, a pigment known to be in all plants. The defense was prepared to refute the chloroform-chlorophyll mix-up in court, and though it ultimately did not bring about justice for little Caylee, in my opinion, I think it's pretty amazing that when computer experts analyzed the Anthony's computer and its digital footprint, they found no searches had been made referencing chlorophyll at all during the time in question. Furthermore, the only searches including the topic of dogs were related to fleas. Things that make you go, Beyond the strange chloroform research, and on the last day that Caylee was seen alive, June 16, 2008, someone in the Anthony home performed another suspicious Google search for foolproof suffocation. And if that was also due to a typo, the person behind the Anthony's computer screen sure seemed to find interest in some of the articles populated from the search, as it was alleged that links were open and web pages spent time on, suggesting someone was reading up on their search terms. And if you have any questions why the suspicious Google searches found on the Anthony's family computer claims our number 2 spot for wildly weird and possibly unknown things about the Caylee Anthony case, Caylee Anthony trial, I suppose you can turn to Google for answers. Number 3, the drowning theory. The drowning theory in the Caylee Anthony case was a key component of the defense's narrative during the trial, so you might be thinking, this is nothing new or unknown, but stand by. According to the defense, Caylee Anthony accidentally drowned in the family swimming pool on June 16, 2008. Casey's attorney, Jose Baez, argued that George Anthony, Casey's father, found Caylee in the pool and instead of reporting the incident to authorities, helped Casey cover up the accidental death. The defense maintained that George Anthony and Casey panicked after discovering Caylee's lifeless body in the pool. Instead of immediately notifying law enforcement, they allegedly decided to conceal the accident, framing it as a kidnapping to protect Casey from legal repercussions. This theory aimed to create reasonable doubt about Casey's intent to harm her daughter willfully. One piece of evidence supporting the drowning theory was the court testimony from Cindy Anthony, Caylee's grandmother, Casey's mother. Cindy mentions that on June 16, 2008, she noticed the family's pool ladder was left down, suggesting that Caylee might have climbed into the pool on her own. Remember, June 15, 2008 is the day Caylee Anthony goes missing.
On June 16th, 2008, did you come home and notice that the pool ladder was up as depicted in the photographs?
You mean on
the ladder?
Yes, it was it was attached to the pool.
And was that a highly unusual event for you to see that?
Yes, so much that I called George at work to see if he had left the pool ladder up, because I also noticed that the side gate was open at the same time.
The drowning theory, while attempting to explain Caylee's death as a tragic accident, was met with skepticism and scrutiny from the prosecution. The timeline of events, the delay in reporting Caylee missing, and the lack of evidence supporting the accidental drowning raised questions about the credibility of this narrative. As we know, the jury found Caylee Anthony not guilty of first-degree murder in 2011, and it is widely concluded that the drowning theory played a role in creating reasonable doubt. While the drowning theory played out like a dramatic movie in court, Caylee Anthony continues to try to breathe life into this story as apparent in the 2022 docuseries, Where the Truth Lies. The events of July 15, 2008 are recounted by Caylee herself in the Peacock series. Caylee wasn't feeling well that morning, so after she gave Caylee her breakfast, she went to lie down and had Caylee lie in the bed with her. Now, Caylee seems to claim the reason she had Caylee sleep in bed with her was because she always had to be on alert because of what she alleged happened to her as a child by the hands of her father and Caylee's grandfather, George Anthony. By the way, whose home they were living in and where they were taking a nap that day. Caylee claims she thought she had locked the door but cannot be sure. She is sure, though, that her father, George Anthony, was not at home when Caylee fell asleep with Caylee next to her. But Caylee says the next thing she remembers is being shaken awake by her father, George, who was asking her where Caylee was. That's when Caylee realizes Caylee is not with her in the bed. During her recollections of these events, Caylee is adamant that Caylee would have never in a million years left Caylee's side without telling her, even if she had to go to the bathroom. She emphatically exclaims this during this documentary. And to me, it seems quite weird, as what 2-year-old baby with seemingly no fear to have for her grandparents, who her mother allows her to spend ample time alone with, has some non-existent wherewithal to deny herself a potty break in her own home while mommy is sick? It doesn't make sense to me. While scouring the house inside and out, Casey runs into George holding Caylee's soaking wet and limp body on the porch. Casey says George berates her for not watching the little girl and then hands Caylee to Casey, telling her this is all her fault. Casey remembers her daughter felt heavy and cold in her arms, and Casey collapses in hysterics, not knowing what to do. With a stark change in his tone, Casey says George then takes Caylee back into his arms and then comforts Casey, telling her everything will be okay. Casey claims George went inside with Caylee, and Casey cannot remember how long she sat there on the porch, just in tears. Whatever, Casey. This narrative from Casey presumes plain stupidity from us docu-viewers, as we are to believe that Casey, for 31 days, did not ask about her daughter and just trusted she came back to life and was being cared for by George Anthony. From Casey's lips to our ears, she proclaims George told her Caylee was safe and they would be reunited soon. Why did Casey not follow up on her daughter's condition? Why was Casey a regular at bars and hot body contests during the weeks after she allegedly held a lifeless Caylee in her arms? And why did Casey get a Bella Vita tattoo in remembrance of a beautiful life after such an ugly chain of circumstances? Why did she lie to cops and lead detectives down fruitless searches for her missing toddler? The almost certain truth is we will probably never know, as where the truth lies is with Caylee Anthony. The questions that continue to surround the drowning theory put it on the list of 3 wildly weird and possibly unknown things about the Caylee Anthony case, Caylee Anthony trial. The Caylee Anthony case remains a notable example of the intricate dynamics involved in criminal trials and the influence of legal strategies on case outcomes. The case continues to be a subject of public fascination and debate. So very unfortunate, so incredibly sad. Let's all remember the real victim here, little Caylee Anthony. And I suppose at least the continued preoccupation with this tragedy keeps little Caylee on the minds and in the hearts of those watching this video and others who maintain an interest in the bizarre events that unfolded from her untimely passing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please support this channel by following, liking, sharing. Get involved in the comment section with me. As long as we're all being respectful of one another, it can be quite healthy to facilitate such conversations. And I'll see you next time.